when I next get the opportunity to be in Israel, I'm looking forward to returning to a favorite old museum. After a $100 million renovation, it's now new. The former Beit HaTfutzot, the Museum of the Jewish Diaspora, is now Anu, the Museum of the Jewish People. And I'm looking forward to visiting when I can. One recent visitor described the Museum of the Jewish People as a cheery, inclusive vision of Jewish peoplehood. If you've been to Beit HaTfutzot, the old museum, you know that it told the story of the Jewish people outside of Israel, honoring our religious heritage, teaching our history, paying homage to victims of anti-Semitism, and exploring varieties of Jewish identity, culture, and identity. This new museum is the only museum in the world that attempts to tell the Jewish story in its entirety. About it, I read, one has the unmistakable sense that the designers and visitors have shared an understanding of what Judaism is, even if they might not agree on all its meanings and implications. Catches your imagination, doesn't it? Jews in agreement about Judaism. That's something I'll have to see to believe. Now, I know in our synagogue and greater Jewish community, some of you are supporters and donors to this unique venture. Perhaps you agree, as some observe, that this new museum is more lighthearted than the original Diaspora Museum. For example, in addition to permanent exhibitions about trailblazers of the Jewish people and synagogues past and present, the first temporary exhibit is entitled Jewish Humor Around the World. And among its features, I understand there are Seinfeld memorabilia from America and routines from Israeli stand-up comics. I look forward to visiting. Until then, I can't comment on the museum's merit or impact, but I'm sharing it with you this morning because still knowing about the existence of a world-class museum of the Jewish people in Tel Aviv raises a few questions. Among them, this: is Jewish peoplehood, is the idea that you and I belong to a distinctive people, that you and I are part of a group with whom we each have an affinity for and identity with. Is Jewish peoplehood something most Jews, or even we here, acknowledge today? I also have a more personal question. If you were asked to select an item to display in this new Museum of the Jewish People, if you were asked to choose something from your life experiences, your memories, or your home, something that represents your Jewish identity, your belonging to the Jewish people, what would you choose? What is your connection? Even deeper, let me ask, what is your contribution to the story of the Jewish people? Upon entering the Museum of the Jewish People, a visitor meets life-size projections of individual Jews describing what Judaism means to them. Apparently, the effect is to create a conversation about the purpose and significance of being Jewish. So for now, my last question. How do you explain your personal understanding of Jewish purpose and meaning? At the outset of the pandemic, I did not imagine these to be among the many questions or concerns when we would emerge from seclusion and slowly begin to return to being with one another. These were not the questions I thought that would be on my mind. Yet coincidental to our necessary separation, and even perhaps because of it, many people began asking questions of Jewish identity. Maybe it was the absence of physical community, lost opportunities to gather with family and friends for Jewish occasions and celebrations. We turned within. We asked ourselves about our Jewish interests, our personal habits, our beliefs. And then came last spring's conflict between Hamas and Israel, which also raised questions of Jewish identity. When Israel came under attack by enemies, terrorists, sworn to her destruction, as riots erupted in Israeli cities and synagogues burned, from a safe distance, some American Jews expressed their personal discomfort with Israeli politics and policies before expressing their personal connection to and concern for Israel and the Jewish people. And at the time I said, our compassion is for all who are innocent. Our compassion is for all who suffer. But our bond with Israel is unique. So let me share with you a word about Israel. Israel is the fulfillment of Jewish peoplehood. Israel enables complete consciousness of Jewish being, identity, and purpose. No other land and no other place allow Jews this wholeness. And that's why our bond with Israel is so very emotional and so compelling. It's why many of us here feel it so personally. Last spring, many of us, I'll speak for myself, I saw in Israel last spring a nation under siege. Others saw in Israel a vitality and strength that overwhelms the region, especially in Gaza, where we all see poverty, suffering, and pain. We all genuinely grieve the loss, the pain, and the human suffering. We feel it for each IDF soldier and every Israeli citizen when they are killed or wounded. We feel it for their families. And yes, we feel it for all innocent Palestinian families who mourn their losses of children and loved ones. However, through the lens of our people's story, through the lens of our people's experience, through the lens of what is our moral memory, we see in that intractable conflict context and narrative. We see a broader history at play. Apparently, many don't. AP Middle East reporter Mati Friedman describes it clearly. The Jews of Israel are the screen onto which it has become socially acceptable to project the things you hate about yourself and the things you hate about your country. Just call it Israel, it's safer. As a result of that, last spring, defending Israel and celebrating Zionism became, as it remains, controversial. But see the link. far away from the Middle East. Here in America, here in our diaspora home, 222 reported anti-Semitic incidents took place during those 2 weeks when Hamas terrorists rained missile attacks against Israel. So now I want to share with you a word about anti-Semitism. In the context of this discussion, the historian of anti-Semitism, Daniel Goldhagen, explains, from the beginning, the notion existed that Jews formed a people, an identifiable ethnic group, like a large family, and not merely a freely come together collection of believers, about which the 16th century Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Judah Loew, explains, since we Jews are separated and scattered among all the nations of the world, and that's of course in a pre-Israel time, since we Jews are separated and scattered among all the nations of the world, a person might think that this is the Jewish people's greatest deficiency. In other words, not worthy of our own nation as Jews, the nations of the world don't need to tolerate our presence mixed in among them. Which, thinking about Israel again, is exactly why Israel is a fulfillment of Jewish peoplehood, even for those of us who do not live there. In my view, the anti-Semite is a coward. Afraid of himself, afraid of herself, fearful of the burdens of freedom, fearful of being able to make a free moral choice, nervous about changes in society and around the world. The anti-Semite seeks an escape from personal responsibility by hating the unknown other. And now, a word about us. In addition to whatever engaged, entertained, and challenged us at home these past months, many of us were alone with our thoughts during a more reflective and quiet time in our lives. So I have a sense that we come to Yom Kippur, this sacred day of introspection, with lots of practice. We say of God on Yom Kippur, you know the mysteries of the universe, the deepest secrets of everyone alive. You probe our innermost depths. You examine our thoughts and feelings. Ourselves aware of only what we and God may know, we seek forgiveness and atonement. We are here to reconcile our thoughts with our deeds, our self-awareness with our personal visions for being in life. In other words, over the past many months, we've gotten good at contemplating the nature of our lives. We have actual experience outside of a synagogue service considering how we hope to carry ourselves back into the world. Maybe you thought about your appearance. Perhaps you've considered what new ventures to pursue and to which former activities you will or won't return. Beyond how we look or how we keep busy, on Yom Kippur we focus on character, vision, and purpose. Have we considered how we might present ourselves and interact when back among others? Kinder, respectful, tolerant, forgiving, curious, more grateful for what is than upset for what isn't. In a city of 1.4 million, in a state of almost 40 million, in a country of 333 million, and in a world of almost 8 billion human beings, we 14 million Jews each ask, Who am I? Where do I belong? With whom do I identify in this vast, mysterious, and diverse human world? What am I about? What binds me to others? What sets me apart? It's complicated. We each function in several subgroups of people simultaneously. Jewish peoplehood is one such historic and enduring address and association, a personal place to belong while living as one among millions and billions, a personal address, a home. It seems that Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel has been much on my mind this holiday season. He writes, Judaism is primarily the living in the spiritual order of the Jewish people, the living in Jews of the past with the Jews of the present. Of all the prayers in the prayer book, among the most familiar to all of us is Elenu. And among the reasons we all know Elenu is because we know it signifies the end of a service. So we're not singing Elenu just yet. But do we know why that is? The origin of Elenu is a matter of debate, though we know it is ancient and was first used formally on Rosh Hashanah in the 2nd or 3rd century. But here's what's important and what I want to teach to you about Elenu today. Elenu, in 10 compound sentences, expresses the essence of Jewish peoplehood. And that's why every service ends with its recitation. It begins with the particular. Elenu lishabeach ladon hakol. We praise the sovereign of all existence. We acclaim God for the special role of the Jewish people in history. Shelo sam chelkeinu kahem. Our destiny is different. We then look forward to the day when differences between peoples will not matter. Elenu concludes with the universal. From the particular to the universal, God embraces all of humanity. Bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad, ushemo echad. On that day, the eternal God shall be one, and the name of God one. But in the middle, the transition from distinguishing the Jewish people to celebrating all people is this phrase: Litakein olam b'malchut Shaddai. To repair the world, or possibly instead of repair, it may read, to establish the world under God's sovereignty. This is a statement of Jewish purpose. Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan describes it as our two duties. Our first duty is to the Jewish people's covenant with God. Our second duty is to seek covenant with everyone else. Quoting Rabbi Heschel again, Judaism is an attempt to prove that in order to be human, you have to be more than a human. That in order to be a people, you have to be more than a people. It is our destiny to live for what is more than ourselves, individually and collectively. So let's learn from COVID. There is a universal reality to the experience of being human. Yet a person does not find his or her life's meaning in their universal existence. Meaning and significance come from our particular identities and our particular experiences. If we are not unique, the world has no need for our personal gifts and talents. If we are not distinctive as a group, if we have no lived history or sacred story to tell, then we have no wisdom or vision to share with the larger world. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks so aptly describes, Judaism believes in one God, but not in one religion, in one culture, one truth. The role of Jews and Judaism is to teach humanity the dignity of difference. This is what Elenu means every time we recite it. That we do not allow our universal sensitivities to become a rejection of Jewish peoplehood. Our liberal values must serve as a quest for particular Jewish significance in a uniquely pluralistic and multicultural society. We need to reclaim Jewish particularism as a foundational expression of Jewish identity and values in an open society. I began a long time ago. I began by asking what you might display in the Museum of the Jewish People as your individual contribution to our collective story. How might you explain your personal understanding of Jewish purpose and meaning? And I hope you'll all give that question some thought. And I hope we'll find opportunities to talk about this alone and together in the year ahead. I might choose to answer with ideas I have taught, textual interpretations I have shared, moments in the lives of Jewish individuals and families at which I have officiated. But what I might choose is an unfair measure for you. My career choice is to serve the Jewish people. And I hope in some small way I have contributed. For our purpose today, I want to level the playing field. Not as Rabbi Shulman, but as Ron Shulman. I ask myself what I'm asking you. And as by now you've come to know, whenever I speak of me or my family, I emote. So I ask, what represents my Jewish identity? What represents my belonging? What is my personal contribution to the story of the Jewish people? And as I tell you mine, please think about yours. Because mine is a contribution I make not alone. It is the promise inscribed on Robin's and my wedding rings. The rings Robin and I designed and wear contain the Hebrew words, Ani ve'ata nishaneh et ha'olam. It is the name and refrain of our favorite Israeli love ballad composed by Arik Einstein. You and I will change the world. Easier said, easier sung than done. We give each other our personal and unconditional love and loyalty. We also give our love and loyalty to the ideas, traditions, and dreams of Judaism and the Jewish people, to make Jewish a personal priority and a family lifestyle, to believe that the purpose of Judaism is to seek aught over is, to imagine what can be even when it is not, and if not yet true in the world at large, to find within the celebrations and ideas of the Jewish people a community where it can be true for me, true for us. The love and loyalty I'm speaking about is of purpose. No current challenge of Jewish life, no concern about Jewish identity and demographics, no personal spiritual or religious curiosity, no fears of anti-Semitism or discussions about Israel. None of that will be met effectively unless and until we find purpose in belonging to the Jewish people. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. We humbly bow before God's sovereignty and holiness. Why? Because we accept our privilege to be members of the Jewish people. And for that distinctive, precious, cherished, unique, and only ours privilege, we give thanks.
אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה אז יבואו כבר כולם. אמרו את זה קודם לפניי, לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. אני ואתה ננסה מההתחלה. יהיה לנו רע, אין דבר זה לא נורא. אמרו את זה קודם לפניי, זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם.